If you're a Lumix photographer and you're not quite sure what lens you should be using, then you might want to watch this. Hey, how's it going? My name's Mercedes. I am a photographer based out here in Toronto, Canada. And today I'm just going to share with you 3 of my go-to lenses that I use for my work. And yeah, let's dive in. So a little bit of background before I kind of dive in. If you watched my last video, you kind of already know this story, but I've basically been using Lumix for, oh God, I want to say like almost 8 years at this point. It's been a long time because my dad came home with a Lumix camera probably when I was like 16, 17, and I've been using Lumix ever since. I actually upgraded from what I was using to the G85. I love the G85. I highly recommend it. I think it's a great camera body. And the lenses I have just complement it very well. So I'm going to show you what lenses I use, and hopefully this helps if you're researching a new lens or you're not sure which one to get. So I'll kind of give you my expertise on it, and yeah, let's dive in. So I am just going to say this first. I am a beauty photographer. I do classify myself as a beauty photographer, and I work in a studio setting. So my lenses are really catered towards that. However, the lenses I have, I also use for outdoor portraits, and I also use for when I'm shooting concerts. So they are geared more towards, beauty photography and in studio settings, but they also work for concerts and portraits and other genres. So I'm going to try and educate you guys on the lenses I use and why I use them as best I can. So stick with me because we're going to dive right into it like right now. So my all-time favorite lens from Lumix that I have used plenty of times is the 42.5mm lens. And now I want to stress something about this lens. This version is not the Leica version, okay? The Leica lens version of the 42.5 is bigger than this, okay? So picture an 85mm on a full frame, and picture how big that lens is. That's how big the 42.5 Leica lens is, okay? Or it's very comparable. Now, I had the pleasure of trying out a Leica lens at a networking event that Lumix was at. And I will say, oh man, some of the best glass I've seen on a freaking lens. It was so good. I thoroughly enjoyed myself with that lens, okay? But this one right here, this is not the Leica model. This is just the 42.5 regular model that they have. If you're looking to do more portraits and you want that bokeh look in your portrait, so blurred background and subject in focus, I would highly recommend you go with the 42.5mm. That is probably my favorite lens to use when I'm shooting outdoors. And also in studios. So when I'm in the studio, I don't have a macro lens. And for my type of photography, for beauty photography, it's probably beneficial to have a macro lens. However, because I don't have a macro lens, my closest equivalent is the portrait 42.5mm lens that Lumix gives. If you are trying to, have a good system of Lumix, and you are just trying to focus more on portraits, the 42.5mm lens is more than affordable. And then pair it with the G85, you're gonna get a nice affordable setup and you're gonna get insane results. So the 25mm Lumix lens comparison is the 50mm full frame. And now everybody loves a 50mm. I think almost every photographer I know, especially if they shoot portraits or they are in studio, I think has some sort of 50mm in their camera bag. I could be wrong, but every photographer I know usually has a 50mm. And it is more than likely a go-to lens. I find with the 25mm, if you're into street photography, if you're into lifestyle, if you do kind of want a bit of a wider portrait, the 25mm is the way to go. I've never really had anything wrong with it. Personally, I don't use it a lot just because of the type of pictures that I do take. But it is still a very good lens to have in your kit just in case, you know, you do need it. And you might even find yourself using it more often than you thought you would. So it's just a good lens to have. It's small, compact, you know, you can put it on your camera and kind of take it with you if you want to go out photographing the day. But yeah, especially if you're a street photographer or your lifestyle or you just want a wider portrait, 25mm is the way to go. So the 35 to 100mm lens is a new one that I added into my camera bag a couple months ago. And the version I have is I think it's the second version because it goes down to a 2.8, whereas the first version only has an f-stop of 4.6. So for me, I wanted the 2.8 just because I do like to have that bokeh in the background. So you can either shoot from 35 all the way up to 100mm. So it has marks on there saying 35, 50, 70, 75, and 100, maybe 70, 100, something like that. But I take this lens with me when I'm shooting a concert. I find because I'm in the photo pit, I do sometimes need the range of a lens because I'm probably shooting up or I'm shooting at a far distance depending where I am in the photo pit. If I'm lucky enough to be taking pictures from, you know, the general admission area, then I'm still gonna need a lens that provides me with a bit of range so I can zoom in from farther distances. I do also use this lens for some of my beauty photography. If I need to have a wider range of the beauty photo, so if I don't need just the face or if I have my model holding a product, I need something that can kind of give me a bit of range in between that 85, that kind of comes before the 85mm mark. So instead of, you know, my studio is very small, I have to be conscious of that. So instead of me backing all the way up to like the wall with a fixed, you know, focal length of a lens, it's easier for me just to switch on this 35 to 100. I can stay in the same spot I am, and then I can just kind of play with the range a little bit to get that nice frame that I need. So it is very beneficial when I'm doing studio photography because it does provide me with more of a range for photos. Whereas a fixed focal length, you are kind of limited. And if you do want something wider and it's the only lens you have, then you kind of do need to start backing up away from your subject in order to get the picture that you want. So all the lenses I just went through, they are compatible with any G series camera body because they are G series lenses. So I use the camera body of the G85, and I've had a few questions about it and, you know, a few recommendations, people asking me, and it's a great camera body, especially if, you know, you are starting out or you are more of a hobbyist or you want a good camera system or a camera body, but you don't want to break the bank. I definitely recommend the G85. You could also go up to the G90 or the G95, but I think they're making upgrades to the G9 body. So I don't know when that's coming out. But I would highly recommend the G85. It's just because I've used it. I've never had any issues with it. It works great. I think if there's one piece of advice that I can kind of give to, you know, photographers who are maybe looking for a new lens or, you know, are kind of trying to figure out what camera system they want to be using or what lens, I think the best thing I can tell you is, I mean, you got to do what's best for you and the type of photography you're doing. So the lenses I showed are, you know, catered to my type of photography, and they do well for my type of photography, but they may not necessarily do well for your type of photography. So you really want to try to find, you know, the happy medium of something that's going to give you the results you want. Every photographer's got their need. Every photographer, you know, is different in what they want. But I think if you can incorporate a nice mix of, you know, a fixed focal length and, you know, a lens that kind of gives you a bit of range and maybe even add in a wide angle in there, I think if you can have a nice mix and maybe, you know, keep your lens kit at the beginning up to like maybe 3 or 4 lenses, I think you'll see results, and I think, you know, you'll be a lot more productive and be a lot better with the lenses you have. Anyways, that is all I have for you today. Hopefully you were able to take away something from this. This was a requested video. You know, people were asking what type of lenses I use and what I use them for. So hopefully you learned a little something. And like always, make sure you subscribe to my channel. There's a new video almost every week. I will link all of my social media below so you can kind of, you know, see what I'm doing, see what I'm up to. You know, feel free to connect with me. I love talking to new people and new photographers. And like always, if you have any requests or you have anything that you want me to go over Lumix wise or just photography in general, make sure you put it in the comments. I'm usually pretty good at reading them. And I would love to hear your thoughts about your favorite Lumix lens, why you use it, and you know, which one out of these three you would prefer to use. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you stick around for next week's video. And yeah, make sure you subscribe for next week's video, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the overwhelming support on my last video. Hopefully I'm doing it justice. But yeah, thanks for watching and can't wait to show you guys more.